Welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP. And today's topic, Renee Good, the Anglo woman in Minnesota that's been used as a martyr and an agenda after being shot to fatality by an ICE officer that was in Minnesota after her and her rough-looking wife, and some people when they saw her wife, and they was looking like, my goodness, she's rough looking, and you can tell who was the one bossing in that relationship. But after the ICE officer was telling them to get out of the way because they were blocking the other vehicles, basically, from doing their ICE duties. And when Renee Good was asked, right, to move, she kept mouthing off like her rough-looking wife kept mouthing off. And then when ICE officer was trying to open the door up, and she tried to speed off and ran to the officer, but at the same time, she's looked at as a martyr. That is some demonic type of agenda to that. See, the thing about it is, supremacists, which is the most awesome mental manipulation force that's ever existed, they're making sure to utilize Renee Good, right? And then, however, pro-border breaking, illegal immigrant type of organizations, entities, however, politicalness. Oh, the list grows long who they're trying to use Renee Good, because you got the super double minority in there, right? You have an Anglo woman because they are considered minorities. Now, there are numbers of Anglo women who can't stand other Anglo women, right? But those are different kind of topics in itself, right? But double minority got an Anglo woman who can slot under minority status, get all kind of little benefits and do some DEI and get all kind of affirmative action. Then, but they look at Black American women and say, oh, they're the ones who are getting this, even though statistically it's numbers of Anglo women who get the most food stamps and get the most welfare. But again, those games have been played for so long, right? And then she can sit there and say she's woman. You see how the genericality, say, oh my goodness, they so oppressed by whom? Show where Black American men have been oppressing Anglo women and putting them on plantations and RAP, robbing them left and right, making them breed and putting them on breeding farms and all kind of things. And then after that, that Black Americans men, Black American women didn't want their kids to go to the same school as numbers of Anglo women, and they were pulling out the kids because they didn't want their Black kids to be around Anglo kids. Please go ahead and show me where that happened, because it never has. So you see how this game goes, right? This is why this system is brilliant. And then Renee Good, being lesbian, right? Her rough looking wife. So you got the lesbian agenda going on, right? Oh my goodness. She was lesbianist. She was, part of the alternative lifestyle category. Oh, how could you do this? But again, act like what they didn't act like what this picture where this ICE officer was open the door, right? To say, hey, okay, you're not complying, right? What's going on? What is going on here, right? And then she speeds off and basically hits the officer. And her rough wife, who admittedly herself said she instigated that, because they try to portray that she was some innocent angelic being, Renee Good, right? Oh, she wasn't part of the organization. Yes, she was. She was very anti-ICE. But watch this, the same type of, should we say, paperness of liberalism, right? And these type of women, you say, hey, What about Black Americans? That has been the number one most hated group upon various parts of society, and being the number one hated group that has been used by bad seed enforcement to enforce what should be unconstitutional segregation laws, right? Hate policies. You get the point. What about that? They quiet. Right? I'm telling you, this game is easily seen through when you see through it. But let me sit there and see how I want to start this particular show. Because here's the thing about it. Because there's a couple of different Black American personnel I also want to show. First, one lady, Black woman named Takia, who was murdered in cold blood by a bad seed officer who she say, for instance, they would say, oh, she have shopliftedness and stuff like that. Well, shopliftingness does not supposed to equate to being murdered. And that's what happened to this particular Black woman, Takia. I'm getting to the second. Oh, you didn't hear no national uproar. This happened within the last couple of months. This happened before Renee Good. Now, this wasn't necessarily an ICE officer. Doesn't matter. It was a bad seat officer, right? Where they shot inside the car, right? They tried to open up the door, and she was trying to move around, and they shot through the door. Oh, you had people. Oh my goodness. Well, she should have complied. Oh, but Renee Good and her rough-looking wife instigated the situation against the ICE officer. He sits there and was trying to get away, and she runs him over, and he shoots, right? In fear of his life, right? And oh my goodness, it's an outrage nationwide all over the place. You see how this disgusting tactic goes. And ain't no millions of American Blacks haven't seen through this game yet, with small exceptions. And the other guy, the other gentleman that was shot and stuff like that. What was his name? Give me a second here. What was his name? I want to show another gentleman. Oh, what was his name? Give me a second here. What was his name? Give me a second. I'm going to find it here. This other guy, Black man. What's the other guy? This Black man that got shot. Give me a second here. What was this guy's name? I'll get to in a second here. Well, this Black man, he got shot by what's supposed to be an ICE agent up there in California on, I think it's right before New Year's or something like that. Keith Porter Jr., who got shot by an ICE officer who was inside this apartment complex. And Keith Porter was sitting there saying, they were saying that he was sitting there shooting his whatever assaultness in the air. Oh my goodness. Well, why did he sit there and shoot that kind of stuff in the air? And people that know, it's like, how many numbers of Hispanics? Oh, some Black Americans who know what I'm talking about. How many numbers of Hispanics have sitting there and shot things in the air? Huh? That's illegal, isn't it? Isn't it? How many numbers of, oh my goodness, enormous amount of how many numbers Anglo males and some Anglo women, how many of them shoot in the air on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and after that, right? That's supposed to be illegal, isn't it? Those bullets don't have names to it, right? Why is it that same discrepancies not get geared toward numbers of Anglo males and women who sit there and shoot firearms on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day? Why is it that discrepancy is not given to the same type of rhetoric toward numbers of Hispanics and how other cultures that sit there and shoot their weapons on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day? Huh? Remember, bullets don't have names. You see this demonic system, and it's almost understandable why there is millions of Black Americans, modern day, that feel shameless, right? It's almost like an inferior complex within certain section of American Blackism, modern day, because it's been ingrained. There's like racism, hatred that's been ingrained by certain ones within the predominant culture, right? And to deflect that, and instead of sit there and saying, okay, we may not have direct direct situation anti-American Black hatred, but we know quite a number of Anglo males and women that do participate in that. We understand that. Some of us know personally that. Okay, well, you know what? Well, demand your politicians get an anti-American, anti-Black American hate crime law passed. Huh? Once you call your congressman and talk about, that Black Americans deserve reparations, they get quiet, right? But let me go ahead and go to this particular video. And then I'm also going to show you a couple of podcasts I did, also showing some hypocrisy in this situation as well. But let me just start with this particular initial part of it in this particular podcast. This would be a great podcast for me. And I also want to utilize this as a timepiece purpose because, again, the enormous hypocrisy of Renee Good and her rough-looking wife participating in anti-ICE activity. And then when they were told to get away, then they did not comply. The officer shoots inside the vehicle, and then you got people losing their freaking mind on various types of agendas, right? But insane trying to martyr her. But Black Americans who are shot to fatality quite often, right? How many times unarmed, right, by bad seas, right? And how many excuses are given for that, right? See the hypocrisy on that. So let's just go ahead and start with this particular first initial video. Give me 1 second. Let me maximize this a little bit better. Okay, let me go ahead and play this.
Welcome back. Time right now is 7:13. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is preparing the National Guard for deployment after an ICE officer shot and killed a woman in South Minneapolis yesterday. City officials identified that woman as 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. Walz has not deployed the Guard yet, but he says this is a precaution in case anti-ICE protests turn violent. Fox's Asher Red is in Minneapolis this morning. And Asher, there's still a lot of debate over if this shooting was justified.
Well, Aaron, there's already been active protests today in Minneapolis. One of them is happening just a few blocks from where I'm standing at the federal building. It appears that federal agents have already used pepper spray on a few agitators, and they've already made arrests. Now, this crowd is about 100 or so people, many of them with signs. The Department of Homeland Security says the ICE agent acted in self-defense in this case, but the governor and the city's mayor just aren't buying it. Immigration agents were conducting targeted operations in South Minneapolis yesterday afternoon when 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good appeared to block them in with her car. When agents told Good to get out of the car, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says she tried to run them over. That's when one of the ICE agents shot and killed Good through the windshield. Secretary Noem is calling Good a domestic terrorist and is accusing her of using a car as a weapon.
You know, people need to stop using their vehicles as weapons. This domestic act of terrorism to use your vehicle to try to kill law enforcement officers is going to stop. And I'm asking the Department of Justice to prosecute it as domestic terrorism.
But some city officials are calling this murder, saying the ICE agent should be arrested and charged. Within hours of the shooting, hundreds of anti-ICE protesters showed up at the scene, many of them throwing snow and chunks of ice at law enforcement. Mayor Jacob Frey is calling the Trump administration's narrative BS, and he didn't use the acronym.
Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
Wow. Wow. Where is all this rhetoric with George Floyd? Where's all that rhetoric with telling we gotta rid these bad seeds from office. We must rid these bad seeds out of office, right? Nope. You get the F out of here, you bad seeds of enforcement, right? Quiet. The insulting. Because Derek Chauvin, the demonic bad seed officer, with, by the way, not enough disappointment and calling out of the sidekick that was complicit in also George Floyd's unalivement, right? Relaying to those non-black people of color, right? That was right by him, complicit, and not stopping Derek demonic Chauvin from putting his nasty demon knees, nasty knee on the back of George Floyd's neck for almost 10 minutes. And those particular non-black people of color, they sat back, those particular bad seeds sat back and did not tell him to stop or get off his neck. They sat back and did nothing, right? It was almost like, oh, why didn't y'all do anything? No, give me a second. Oh, that's not working. When it does that, man, these systems sometimes, let me sit there and show you what they be doing on that. When you start talking about what are you going to do about bad seeds that's been doing these bad seeds toward Black Americans for centuries, what are you going to do about that?
Nothing. I know nothing. I know nothing.
Right? You see how that goes, right? And I'm like, but Renee Good, right? Anglo woman. So they playing that card, right? They use that as a martyr. She's lesbian. She's in a marriage with another woman, right? So they play that particular part in some kind of way. And then and she was anti-ICE. She was pro-border break illegal immigrants, like her rough-looking wife, right? And I'm like, and look what's going on in Minnesota with the little scamming version of Somalians. Oh my good, how many millions have they sit there and scammed off illegal daycare centers? Scammed off, right? Along with the Anglo woman that was part of a major, largest child nutrition fraud scam program ever in America's history. I did a show on the Real CP show on that part. But some of the main other people right by her was scamming Somalians up there. And I just did another podcast about the fraudulent daycare scams up there with quite a number of Somalians up there, even though they only make up about 8%. That's all up there. But you got having political figures, you got having the organizations that want number of Somalians and these other various tethers to be a pseudo replacement against Black Americans, right? Could you imagine if Black Americans had that kind of resources of freeness that was given to these scammers Somalians up there in Minnesota and however other places, right? I mean, millions. Again, I did a show on that. That was in Minnesota. Where's all the super outrage at that? Nope. But if it was Black Americans that did that, oh, they'd have been calling for a national boycott and all kind of things, demanding political figures sit there and get a hold of this, all this kind of stuff. But nope. And what they're doing is insulting millions of Black Americans in their faces, with few exceptions who are seeing these games. They are slapping the living crap toward millions of Black Americans, saying, "You stupid Negroes, we are doing certain things in front of your faces, and y'all so stupid, most of you Negroes, and y'all won't even do nothing about it." That's what they're doing, right? Let me go ahead and share my screen. Which one I want to show next? Because remember, I was sitting there saying that, you know what, before I go further, let me sit there and show you something here for a second. This was a show. Oh, let me make sure. Okay, this is the show topic I did on the Real CP Show podcast, as you see already. Be interested in going there and checking some, videos out and on the especially on the live tab and stuff. Anti-legal right-way immigration, terrorism, protesters, chaos. They want open borders. What was this? How long was this ago? Let me give about close to 2 years ago, right? Close to 2 years ago. Today is January 19th, 2026, which makes it crazy because it's supposed to be Martin Luther King's Day. And you got these fools out here. You got some fools out here that will try to sit there and make Martin Luther King as if his only existence was "I have a dream" speech, right? Not anything. Why did he have to have that speech? Because of the hatred that's put upon Black Americans. How about the racial terrorism that was put upon him, right? How about the Black Americans that were going from Selma, right, to Montgomery in the protesting, right, of anti-Black American hatred, right? What about all those boom threats that was against them as well? and a few, extremely few Anglos that was in there. Where's all the white Hispanics? Where's all the white Asians? Right? We're not talking about some of the good ones, because first of all, they wouldn't even been around like that, right? When they had that the Selma March in 1960s, please, people, I don't think so. They wouldn't have been around like that. Many types of groups and immigration people weren't even around like that in the 60s, people. But see, now, again, with MLK Day today, you got people benefiting off of what he did. You see how that goes, right? They had no dog in the fight in the 60s to be around Black Americans, to help Black Americans. The Black Americans didn't need them, because Black Americans have been sitting there fighting for centuries in this country before 99.899% of other cultures would even exist in America, people. Before what we call the United States even became United States of America, Black Americans were in this country fighting. Before, again, 98.999% of other cultures and backgrounds and term lifestyle categories that didn't even exist in the 1600s, didn't exist in the 1700s, didn't exist basically the gigantic in the 1800s, and going to the 1900s, people like Renee Good, there was no such thing as LGBTQ 3, 5, 4, 65, 100 years ago, people. Those are new modern terms. You had gay term was the first thing in the early 1900s, well, sometime 1900s, not that early, right? Then you had lesbian. There was no such thing as LG, people. Gay came first, which also included certain types of Anglo women, because they were the predominant personnel that would have been doing lesbianism. Then you had a few little Black American women that participated. That was super small. But gay came first, not lesbianism. You see how that game goes. There's no such thing as trans, and certainly no thing as queerness, no such thing as questioning, right? These are newfangled things that weren't even around in MLK's time like that, people. Right? But you got people right now to this day talking about why we need to sit there and celebrate MLK. Or they'll play the, well, you're not supposed to judge someone based upon their skin, but the character, right? But at the same time, that's exactly what quite a number of people do in various parts of society, in various parts of America, right? Judge Black Americans based upon not the character, but the skin first. Even though Black Americans don't commit the most crime. Even though for centuries, Black Americans who have been the most productive, had the most patents, had the most achievements, been in the military the most beyond anybody else besides certain ones within the Palmese culture, been the most heroes, fought in every single war and conflict in America's history, man, had to have HBCUs, right? Nobody else had no one had, before Black Americans had to have HBCUs in the 1800s, because you had quite a number of Anglo personnel that did not want to have any kind of Black Americans around them, right? That's why various parts of Angloism are the true affirmative action recipients and a true DEI personnel. Yes, they are in a collective way. So don't let people run games with those poor whites. You can be the poorest whites, and still, and how many of them had a hatred for Black Americans? There was only a small amount of Anglo personnel people in this country for centuries that say, hey, we might be Anglo, but we're not like the collective Anglos that want to have hatred for Black Americans. Right? But those are different topics in itself. So in this particular podcast I did, again, anti-legal right-way immigration terrorism, protesters, chaos. They want open borders. This was in California. Do you see something unfunny about this? A Mexican flag. When they were sitting there chunking rocks, chunking bricks, setting police cars on fires, doing all kind of chaos up there in California and many places in the United States. I mean, just turn up stuff left and right. Why? Because they didn't want people to do any kind of immigration. They didn't want any type of enforcement of immigration, border break illegal immigrants. They want open borders. And there are numbers of Black Americans up in California. Who know that knowing? Oh, there are quite a number of white Hispanics wannabes up there too. They have a hatred for Black Americans, right? There was a city, LA City Council, white Hispanic up there, and some of our Hispanicism that made blatant anti-American Black hatred rhetoric up there, and that was being voice recorded up there, blatant, and they really didn't want to step down. And how many numbers of Black Americans who say they have white Hispanics or want to be white Hispanics that have used N-words left and right, have sit there, have showed terrorism toward Black Americans up there? How many numbers of certain white Asianism up there that have showed blatant anti-Black Americanism? Oh, the list goes on. I'm not talking about the ones that's going to apply to, so we're not going to play that game, right? The point is it not true at all? See how that goes. See, they love playing. It's not all games. And they know there's some foolish numbers of Black Americans who sit there and fall for this. Not all game. Instead of saying, go to hell. Right? They're not going to sit there and let people dictate to Black Americans what is right there in front. The hatred of Black Americans. And you got these little filthy little tethers who are sitting there tethering in different places of America. Who know they are? We're not talking about some of the good brothers and sisters, some of these other places. We're talking about the tethers who have a hatred for Black Americans because they fled from their own places and they trying to replace Black Americans. So all that I'm sitting there saying, well, I sit there and did the show to sit there and show the blatant hypocrisy again. And so a Mexican flag in the United States and blatant terrorism that was going on in California and all different places. Look at this right here. This was in California. They sitting there going against, they said they didn't want any kind of, anyway, I'm gonna stop this. So you get the point. It was blatant turmoil on that situation on that, right? Just like this right here. Let me sit there and show you one other one. Well, that's various ones, but I'm gonna sit there showing you for a second. I didn't kind of fell behind what I was doing. So let me give me one moment here. What's the other one I did? Oh, this one here. This is another one I did on this situation on the Real CP show one. The N-word using Hispanic woman protesting for illegal immigrants outside by Omaha meat plant. Yes. Again, a Real CP show. When did I do this one? About 6 months ago, right? On that situation. What's going on with this? You had a disturbing white Hispanic that was sitting there in her little disturbing other white Hispanic counterparts that was sitting there throwing rocks and whatever it is toward these particular enforcement and however ICE personnel that were going to this meat packing place up in Omaha. Now remember, right? Remember Hispanics, because those are primary, especially within Mexicanism, how they try to show Mexicans as some popular looking versions, right? Huh? See, you have to watch the demonic situation to try to portray on that. But what I'm getting at, talking about in America, I want you to think if Black Americans were running across that border to Mexico and demanding in front of their governmental building, Mexico City, that you must sit there and pass comprehensive immigration reform, which basically means giving amnesty to Black Americans across the board, automatic citizenship, sovereignty to not have any kind of enforcement action due to any kind of Black Americans whatsoever. Black Americans can go across their border any time to place, anytime they want to do, don't have any kind of correct documentation, don't care whatever it is, demand that they should be able to vote in elections, whatever it is, stuff like that, right? If Black Americans don't like what Mexico government is doing, they can sit there and blaze other type of their immigration enforcement cars and fly American flags and all kind of stuff down to Mexico, create chaos and burn up cars over there. Do you know how quick that will be quelled? This is why the supremacists wants this stuff to happen in El Norte, North America. Do you not realize how quick this stuff can be squashed? Do you know how quick? But the system does not want that. They want chaos. So anything I'll play. Let me just play just a few seconds of this, right? Or gotten some kind of program because again, this creature doesn't even look, like she's in her 40s or 50s. So her parents are not going to be in their 70s or 80s. So they still will be late.
this creature doesn't even look
Someone's left side.
like she's in her 40s or 50s. So her parents are not going to be in their 70s or 80s. So they still will be latecomers in America and have the nerve to utilize the N-word. Look at that. Look at that. See? Look at that. The creature is on the left side, but the other violent creatures around you. You just saw another on the right side throwing that rock as well. But
do you imagine if that was again Black Americans doing it across that border, throwing rocks at their immigration officers, throwing rocks at their enforcement people? Do you know how fast that will be stopped? This is embarrassing, right? But let me go ahead and fast forward this.
The creature. Look at that! Look at that! This guy's black. They flee like little coward roaches.
Come on!
Oh, see, look, and bottom right, bottom left, they're gonna come back around, say the N-word. Listen to the accent of it. Not yet. And look at that! Look at that! Let's get in front of federal.
I mean, just look at that for a second. They don't want the enforcement to enforce immigration laws. So, however, this meatpacking plant, knowingly, unknowingly, had numbers of border break illegal immigrants there, right? And you got these little Hispanics, white Hispanics, predominantly Mexicans, in this situation that did not want their counterparts to sit there and be removed, because remember, there are quite a number of Hispanicism, the ones applies to, who have a super hatred for Black Americans, because quite a number within Hispanicism want to be Anglo badly in America. Again, that's a whole different topic in itself. And they slot under the minority banner as well, because the largest group of Hispanicism in America is Mexicans. And again, I'm not talking about some of the good Mexican brothers and sisters. Those are going to be very small, just like ones within a person within part of its culture. It's going to be a very small number of Anglo personnel who don't have the intrinsic internal hatred toward Black Americans, but then will smile in the face of the Black Americans. Because if they really wanted to sit there in equality, they would be demanding from the political figures in a collective way to get reparations for Black Americans and no excuses. You got no excuses for what we call Native Americans, and how many of them are white Native Americans, right? Who put themselves on what they call a dog's role and some other roles, and sit there and say that, you know what, they want to be considered Native Americans, and they made them Native Americans too as well. But they don't. But those white Native Americans, they're not called Pretenians. But if you start talking about Black natives, see, they want to try to put Black Americans in certain positions. There are Black folks out there who are natives as well. They might be what you call the natives, what you think are the latecomer Native Americans, what you call that. But again, those are whole different complex situations. I'm not going all that, right? Because again, the early 1900s, you had racial racism, terrorist type people who sit there and redirected the racial boxes, and the ones that were considered Black natives, they put them in the Black banner part of it, right? Besides, however, Black Americans, right? So, but again, even with that, you have some numbers, you got numbers of Black Americans that are part of what we call Native American tribes. But how many Black Americans are made to jump through the hoops to sit there and get themselves enrolled in some of those wink, 5 civilized tribe versions, right? Making them jump through the hoops. But the white types of Native Americans, how many of them don't make them jump through hoops, right? Don't make them re-quantify their Native Americanism. You saw this system is so rugged, so raw, so disgusting that they show blatant anti-Black American hatred, and they know millions of Black Americans are very naive to allow, with small exceptions, to keep allowing people to basically just salivatate upon Black Americans' faces as if Black Americans just showed up out of nowhere in America. Even before, without the Black Americans, many numbers of cultures and backgrounds and immigration type personnel and tethers would even be in America like that. Nobody would sit there, would tolerate the type of disrespect that Black Americans have been going for centuries. There is no way. But same time, there is no other culture or background that has fought the most like Black Americans as well. Unfortunately, ever since the 70s and going forward, dwindling strong Black American maleism has been dwindling, right? You've had a little bit more coons. You have a little bit more of naive ones. You have a little bit more of one that keep trying to chase the money part of it. Chasing the money does not equal to happiness. Chasing the money does not equal respect, right? But those, again, is a different topic. But as you see on this particular video, you see these particular white wannabe Hispanics, they're jumping in front of this enforcement person's vehicle, right? Now, remember how long this has been told, how many numbers of Mexicans, how many numbers of other Hispanics, how many numbers of other groups, how many numbers of tellers, how many numbers of immigration personnel, how many of them get free resources, by the way, open up businesses and begin to go to school for free, or if they get loans, how many of them get forgivable? I mean, the list goes. I don't want to go into all that. Those whole different games in itself, right? Get free training, all kind of stuff like that. That's kind of reparations, unearned reparations. You see how this game goes. The situation in Somalians, the little tethered Somalians up there in Minnesota, millions of, again, daycare scam, millions of resources, and empty buildings with no kids in there. And how many of them got millions of dollars of resources and Medicaid fraud, healthcare fraud up there, right? I'm telling you, man, to sit there and observe this stuff, and they know that millions of American Blacks are like, I ain't got anything to do with that. And this is what they like to have. There's a time to ignore stuff, and there's a time to not ignore and call this stuff out. But all that I'm saying before I finish this up is that this particular video is that, remember how many times you have people saying people only, you got these certain type Mexicans and some other personnel that flee. Well, they only come over here to do the job that Americans don't want to do. You see how insulting that is? So you got quite a number of Indians from India that are arriving over here that are also being used to replace Black Americans, and also to replace certain types of Anglos and some other people. I mean, various types of immigration personnel from different other places. Oh, the game is tight, right? The game is tight. I want you to notice how many Indians in India are putting certain high-level positions. So you couldn't find no American citizens to be put in those positions, and you couldn't find any Black Americans that were qualified to be put in those positions, but you can find Indians from India. Now, hey, whatever they do their thing. But I'm just saying there are agendas to this kind of situation, right? And trying to hurry up and get to the point of this in this story right here. Remember, again, how many times it's told, numbers of these Hispanics, specifically more Mexicans, once applies to, as if the majority of Mexicans work low-wage jobs at these places. When before, these were high-wage places, by the way. At these meat-packing places, they were high wages, by the way. Until you got some greedy type people that said, no, we can pay low wages to have immigration personnel, to numbers of Hispanics, whatever it is. Oh, don't get the stuff confused. They ain't just working low wage. I don't go into all that. But the point I'm making is that in this situation, right, stable job at this meat packing place, well, that don't sound no fields. By the way, the majority of Hispanics don't work in fields. By the way, on that, the majority of Mexicans don't work in agricultural fields, by the way. And robotics is in replacing numbers of them. So now what? You see how this game goes, right? So you telling me at the meat packing place, at apple packing places, at fruit packing places, vegetables. Anyway, I'm going. The list goes long. So you tell me no American citizens will work at a meat packing place, even though they were doing it before? No Black Americans, no Anglo Americans, et cetera, would sit there and work at a manufacturing places that hire a lot more immigration, hire a lot more Hispanics and some other groups. Do you see how that go? None citizens. You said that game goes, right? Let's continue.
Cars. Now imagine Black American people doing that across that border in other places, protesting immigration.
Hell no. This is, oh my God.
That word. And you're,
yeah. Oh, I don't forget to say it. You hear them? You're not taking them.
You're not taking them. You be like, what country are you in?
Do you understand how crazy that would sound? Black Americans were doing across that border, and so you had enforcement people that would say, "Oh, well, here are some Black Americans over here. They don't have the proper documentation. They're sitting there working over this particular place, and they're sitting there saying we have a right to work anywhere we want to work at, and we don't need no documentation. Oh, they don't need no documentation to work in any kind of place. They should be able to have open borders and go anywhere they want to go, and they're just going across the border because they're doing a job that other Mexicans won't do. You think that's going to fly? See, unfortunately, they know there's millions within Black Americanism, again, with few exceptions, that just cannot get into super competition mind mode, right? To get deep and dirty, like competition thinking, like, look, man, like Dr. Clark, there is no friends, basically, that Black Americans collectively had, not small individuals, right? Because if it was small individuals, if it was collective Anglos, collective Hispanics, collective Asians, whatever that's supposed to mean, because it's Afro-Asians, and Armenia is an Asian country, Iran is an Asian country, Iraq is an Asian country, but you know what I'm talking about? They're Asians. You see how this game goes, but you got people walking around talking about generically Asians. That's the whole game. You know, Asia is a continent made up of dozens of countries and uncalculable numbers of islands, right? But you see how these game goes, right? And they know there is, again, millions of Black Americans that are very naive, with small exceptions, that do not see these tactics. They know it, because too many numbers of Black Americans, the ones applies to, with few exceptions, are constantly trying to sit there and help these other cultures basically be the fall even more toward Black Americans. You see how this deadly game goes. And they know most Black Americans don't understand how much they are being used.
They gonna say, you ain't taking these border breakers, basically. I don't care. We want border breakers, right? Pseudo border breakers, right? Especially about off they been Ohio.
Take them all, bitch.
Which one?
That's another offense, right? You are doing this and see how sit vandalizing and trying to tell another. Almost.
Fucking nigga.
Oh, there we go. Have been victims of identity theft, right? Especially by border breakers, and tell them, oh, it's not a victimless crime.
Don't touch me, bitch. Don't touch me.
Almost.
Fucking nigga.
Oh, there we go.
Fucking nigga.
Well, last time.
Almost.
Fucking nigga!
Oh, there we go.
Mm.
Fucking nigga!
Do you see this is the insultingness of this? Now, these are the type of wannabe white Hispanics that also the numbers of Black Americans that keep trying to fight for them. And it is a sad sight to see certain numbers of Black Americans that are sitting there fighting for these border break illegal immigrants. In general, immigration, they fight for their rights. They fight for quite a number of Mexicans. They fight for numbers of Indians from India. They fight for however numbers of people, left and right. They're fighting for other people's rights that only supposed to have rights in general in America, not being citizens. Right? And how many numbers of these foreign-born immigration type personnel who have become U.S. naturalized citizens, the ones applies to, right? And I'm not talking about some of the good ones, I'm talking about the ones who fraudulently put fraud on the application for a United States naturalization process, and numbers of them became naturalized citizens. How many of them have been got caught with fraud? And these are the ones that also that they want Black Americans to keep fighting for. Do you understand how insulting this is to the American Black ancestors who fought in this country to try to sit there and be treated as equality? What about right now? You got it's 2026. 100 years ago was 1926. What's going on 1926? Black Americans were in formal segregation. There was no such thing as any significant whatsoever Mexicans in America. There was definitely no such thing as white Hispanicism like that. There was definitely not even a half a piece of what we call Asians in America like that. The largest type of Asian would be called a certain extremely minute of Chinese. Japanese wouldn't even count it like that. Koreans don't even do that. Vietnamese, please. Hmong people, I don't think so. Laotians, stop playing. Cambodians, really stop playing. Right? Wouldn't even own America like that. Not even half an inkling. Right? Indians from India, stop playing for real. They weren't even thought about 100 years ago. Right? You see how this game goes, that it's played upon Black Americans left and right. Because they know Black Americans collectively are the ones that are so used and abused mentally, abused with games left and right, not even real type tactics, not even real true, this real good manipulation tactics, which is not good, but it's like, if you're going to play the game, play it right. They're not even playing the game right. They're just sitting there playing infantile level toward Black Americans by the millions, with small exceptions, because they say most Black Americans don't even know. They so naive, they don't even know what kind of games we playing upon them. Right? Look at this right here. Colored waiting room. This was going on in the 60s, people. This was after World War I, after World War II, and going to the Vietnam War. This was still going on. Where did it say? Where do you think they're talking about Indians from India? Huh? You think talking about some kind of Lebanese people? Syrians, because they got some brown skin, right? You got some Armenians, they got some brown skin. Again, you think you're talking about some Indians from India, right? You think you're talking about some tethers who came from sections of Africa, which is a whole different topic. Africa is made up of 50 freaking countries. You got however parts of North African, they don't consider themselves Black Africans like that. Please, people. Let's use some Egypt, who's controlling the pyramids? Non-Black Egyptians, Arab versions who are late coming to Egypt, and they're controlling Egypt tourism. Do you see the insulting of that? You got western part of Africa that how many of them don't like East Africans? How many numbers of East Africans don't like West Africans? How many numbers of North Africans don't like South Africans? How many South Africans like North Africans? You see how this game goes, but they know Black Americans are collectively gullible to these games. And like in this topic today of Renee Good, there are not that many, but there are some Black Americans out there Ford sitting there and saying, oh my goodness, Renee, good situation, right? Oh my goodness, that was so wrong with ICE. Oh, what they did. But you like, what? Oh, you mean over centuries of anti-Black American pain or anti-Black Americanism by bad seeds for centuries? And you don't hear these other cultures jumping up and down about that? Well, George Floyd, go to hell. What was going on before George Floyd, people? Blatant anti-American Black hatred. What was going on after George Floyd? Blatant anti-Black American hatred, people. Where is it that George Floyd law, which was an embarrassment, gullibility, which we even passed, and it was all milked up and diluted and stuff like that, like the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment of the Constitution. Please, people, let's not be this gullible. And they say love Black Americans that are gullible. That George Floyd had nothing to do specifically Black Americans. I did a whole show topic on that. Nothing to do specifically for Black Americans. Right? So no anti-Black American hate crime law is passed. No, but they have an anti-Asian bill that's been passed. That was they used all Black Americans to sit there and act like Black Americans were attacking Asians. And what I say earlier, and that is such a disgusting tactic, right? Because you say, wait a minute now for a second. Which Asian people talking about? Because there's Asians that can't stand the other Asians in America. But you see how this game goes, right? Oh, how many knows of Black Americans have went inside certain sectionality of Asian stores and been showing hatred? But unfortunately, they said, well, the Black American Negroes go into our stores and our nail salon shops and buy haircut, wigs and all these little weave stuff like that in our shops. So whatever then, right? But instead of sitting there demanding, however, personnel, just like they've given various types of Asian people free governmental help, resources, freebies, no demanding, the same kind of stuff you're giving them, plus more should be given to Black Americans as reparations as well. Nope. You see how this game goes, right? Oh, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. So let me go ahead and share my screen on this. I feel way behind, but however it go, because I'm not going to do another show on this. This right here is what I want to show you on here. Give me a second. What did I want to? I wanted to. You know what? Where did I want to start here? When I was talking about earlier about the Black American woman who they try to portray as, oh, she was just such a bad shoplifter. She did this and did that. Give me a second here. Give me a second. Let me find it first. Give me 1 second here. Supporter. Give me one moment here. What did I do with it? Okay. Hold on. Give me a second here. Where did it go? Oh, this right here? Yes, right here. Now, this right here, I was going to place way at the beginning. Takaya Young. Where's all the blatant outrage for Takaya Young? For the people who don't know, Takaya Young was a Black American woman that was in Ohio. And it was said that she was in the store and she supposedly had shoplifted. Supposedly. So she went to her car and I guess hired police and were trying to question her and do that. So I guess she started trying to move out a little bit from her car, inside her car. And they were in front of the car and she was trying to just move that car herself. Maybe she's trying to get out the way of the officer. Nope. And they shot inside the car and unalived her. Where's the outrage at that? Huh?
We have breaking news. A jury has acquitted a former Ohio police officer who shot and killed a pregnant woman in a confrontation over alleged shoplifting. The 21-year-old was accused of shoplifting when Officer Connor Grubb approached her car. He says her car then rolled towards him and he shot in self-defense. The family of Takaya Young became incredibly emotional just moments after the judge read that verdict.
We, the jury, upon our oaths and law and evidence in this case, find the defendant not guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Mr. Grubb, you're...
The jury found Connor Grubb not guilty on all of the charges. He was facing up to life in prison if convicted. ABC legal contributor Brian Buck.
And by the way, this system is so brilliant. Remember, they're always saying that about snitches get stitches and all that kind of stuff. You see it. I have a question. Do you think Black Americans can go to predominantly white neighborhood and start tearing up stuff or stealing? And you think numbers of well-to-do all Anglo-Americans are not going to sit there and call law enforcement up and what you call snitching instead of calling what it is accountability, for wanting betterness in a neighborhood? But within Black Americans, they call that snitching. They have really did a messed up job toward millions of Black Americans. Snitches get stitches, right? Ain't that interesting? They don't apply to Anglo people. They don't apply to numbers of Asians. They don't apply to Indians, right? If Black Americans, and the list goes on. If Black Americans go in their neighborhoods and again, stealing stuff, breaking in houses left and right, and Anglo personnel or the Indians saw that person or the Anglo person or the Mexican person, you get the point. Some other immigration personnel, some kind of latecomer immigration person, and they saw Black American personnel breaking someone's house or car or stole a car. Where do you get the point, right? You think they're not going to report that to enforcement? You think they'd be like, oh my goodness, we can't do that because that's called snitches. They said snitches get stitches. You think that's going to apply to them? They'd be like, I don't think so. Because if you started doing things wrong to them, you're going to have the weight of big dog coming down on people. You understand that? See, snitches get stitches only applies to Black Americans to look the other way if things are happening bad toward Black Americans by other Black Americans, right? That's when snitches get snitches comes into play, right? But that crap ain't gonna work if that's in a predominantly white neighborhood. They be like, we don't care, Negroes. That don't apply to us. And they be like, we dare you to do anything to them, right? Because they just sit there and call the big dogs and say, you know what? You better not touch them. Or you're going to deal with the big dog, the big, not the small big dog that think they're a big dog. No, you have to deal with the big dog. Right? And that stops all that stuff. But long as the snitches get stitches applies to Black Americans, if you see someone stealing a car in a Black neighborhood, if you see somebody going inside Black American's house, well-to-do house, and it's a Black American person who's doing that, you ain't supposed to say nothing. You're supposed to say, like, I don't see nothing, right? Now, I read quite a number of people within various parts of economic culture, like they don't see nothing when it's Black Americans that are the number one hated group, right? The number one has most hate crimes put upon him. Oh, you got people out there, they don't see nothing at all. But I'm just saying that snitches get stitches is something that need to be done away with, man. That is destructive. It's insulting. That stuff don't apply to no other culture except Black Americans. You go into some other predominantly decent neighborhood, as if Black Americans don't have decent neighborhoods, which is a whole different topic in itself. They love trying to show Black Americans as some deduced down collective people when Black Americans, right, in a collective way, are considered middle class. Right? Black Americans 9,000% don't commit criminality like that. Right? But you see how Black American males, 99.899% don't commit murder. But you see how they keep trying to be the number one criminality they want to keep trying to show Black American males do is murder. 98.999% of Black Americans do not do murders. Gigantic amount of Black Americans are not in prison. And by the way, how about you said, well, there are numbers of Black Americans in prison. How about the Black Americans who have been exonerated, who have been the number one males in society who have been exonerated the most and found out they did not commit the criminality that was shown that they did? Black American males. Oh, they don't want to talk about that. But Epstein, people mad about Epstein only because they was supposed to allegedly did things with girls, right? But what about the guy at the CEO of Abercrombie Fitch who was sitting there doing his thing with boys or adult males and possibly young adult males? What about that? I did a show on that. You see how the hypocrisy on that is itself, right? And notice Epstein isn't that dealing with, and I don't want to go into all that. But see, again, isn't it interesting that if you say something certain way, oh, by the way, isn't it interesting? They don't sit there and say Epstein is, oh, that's Jawish. Ain't it interesting? You got people to make sure not to sit there and bring that up, right? Or people say that's anti-Semitic. Notice how you don't hear that? You don't hear that rhetoric, do you? Nope. It has nothing to do with Jawish now. It has nothing to do with he's just a white male who did disgusting things toward underage girls, but no accountability to the parents who allowed these girls to go to Epstein Island and these other places. See how that goes, right? Boy, this disturbing. This the tactics. But let's continue.
Meyer is here with more on that. Brian, this incident was caught on body cam video. So how did the evidence play out in this case? Are you surprised by the verdict?
I'm not surprised by the verdict. I think ultimately it came down to whether or not you believe the officer should have stood in front of that vehicle. And once you get there and you think he does have the right to do so, it's part of his procedure, whether or not they argued it was proper or improper. But if that's what the jury believed, then self-defense becomes very easy because as the defense argued, that vehicle was a weapon that could have harmed him, and therefore he is justified in using deadly force. And so it seemed to make sense, at least how the defense argued it and the result that we see.
You see this coon, this sellout. Now think about Renee Good, anti-ICE, right? Protester, want open borders, right? Open immigration, right? Don't care nothing. They didn't care nothing about Black Americans, right? Being the number one most hated group. Crime stats show that, right? Even though the majority of Black Americans don't commit crimes, right? White collar crimes. We know who commits the most white collar crimes, right? You got some people, Epstein's girlfriend, who was complicit of bringing Harvard girls, whatever it is, to Epstein, all other places. She got a little pat on the forehead, basically, and they put her in what they call cupcake jail, right? What they talking about, like Martha Stewart, who they saying she's a felon. Martha Stewart was a felon. They said she got caught with inside trading, right? A felony. And she went to cupcake jail, and look at Martha Stewart now. She's still doing good. You see how this goes. You see how the white hypocrisy of this situation goes. And they know Black Americans quite often. They saying millions of Black Americans, with few exceptions, are extremely gullible, are the most gullible modern day culture in America. They say it's Black Americans, right? Now they know a small number, they're not playing that tactic. But they saying, well, we don't like those small number of Black Americans who are seen through this game, but as long as it's not collective Black Americans, right? And these tethers, like this guy, he could be a tether, he could be a sellout. Well, hey, man, if the jury said this or whatever said that, however it is, I mean, however it go, you be like, Renee Good, what about Renee Good? Again, his rough-looking wife, who said herself that she, knowing that she was instigating her wife, Renee Good, to basically do what she was sitting there doing, right? And you got outrage at Harvard, predominant numbers of Anglos who are doing this, and maybe some immigration personnel in Minnesota and certain places in America who are outraged at how dare this enforcement personnel try to protect his life, right? And how dare they try to enforce immigration laws, right? In America, how dare they do that? And as if we don't know, there's bad seed ICE, there are some bad seed enforcement, there's bad seeds in various areas, right? But interesting, they want to talk about then when it's affecting non-Black Americans. When it's affecting non-Black Americans in a collective way, then it's like, well, Black Americans just need to sit there and comply. You see how that goes, right? As the Black Americans collectively not complying to, when Black Americans comply You know, then they still asked the crowd to, when they did the Nuremberg trial, right, with the bad Hitler man, right, which right now his essence is still going right now, where they still trying to find people that they felt were responsible for doing bad things to know the Jewish people. They could be in their 90s, 99, 100, and they still want them to be brought to justice. They're not told to kill, get over the past, right? And you had people in Nuremberg trial say, hey, they were just only doing what they were told. Isn't it interesting that don't fly in bad seas? Oh, and bad seas say, hey, man, you know what? Hey, we're only just sitting there and enforcing certain, various types of unconstitutional law. We're interpreting laws in an unconstitutional way. Oh, well, there's no Nuremberg trials in America for bad seas and other type of anti-American black hatred type people. Isn't it unfunny how that don't work? So the game goes, right? But Renee Good and her ferocious looking wife, right? And some other people know what I'm talking about, right? Knowingly sit there and did not comply to the ICE enforcement to move out the way and stop trying to impede their duties as ICE officers, right? Isn't it interesting how you got people that lost their minds? They don't want to talk about that part. Oh, she shouldn't have got shot, even though the ICE agent told her to move out the way, try to get it out the way very calmly, right? Just sit there and pull out the gun and boom, piece of equipment, shoot all over beforehand, right? None of that, right? Pull the boom piece of equipment out when she tried to run over the officer, right? Oh, but they didn't see that part. But to Kaya's situation, right? She's in a car. Hold on.
Based on the reaction.
Go back here. Hold on. So he gets in front of the car.
Whether or not they argued it was proper or improper, but if that's what the jury believed, then self-defense becomes very easy because as
he pulled the boom piece of equipment out right in front, right? You saw it quick, that comes out real fast.
The defense to argue that the vehicle was a weapon that could have harmed him, and
what's the difference again?
Have harmed him,
huh? Do you see how this go? He's pointing the boom piece of equipment in front of the window, right? He's pointing boom piece of equipment in the window to Kaya, right? She, however, allegedly sit there. Maybe she's trying to get out the way herself, right? Huh? She gets shot to unalive fatality. Oh, well. Renee Good, same similar situation, right? Otherwise, that she was trying to sit there and basically bait ICE people to do something. That's what her ferocious looking wife, Renee's wife, ugly looking wife tried to do. See, you can play this little, what's the word for it? Beauty and all beholder. That's bull, right? There are some people who like certain size women. There are numbers of males who don't like slim women. Nothing wrong. Everybody, people have what they like. But I'm saying to you, we're talking about collectively, right? In this situation. And you can have a non-small woman, but her personality is decent. And if that guy likes that, then and both of them love each other and she's treating them good, however go on that, right? But those are different topics in itself. But we're talking about collectively, by the way. What I'm saying is that the horrendousness of that atrocious wife of hers, she came across as a very controlled, bossy, authoritarian type of person in a relationship, right? Whew. And how she was trying to bait the enforcement personnel, bait the ICE officer, however it is, right? Talking crazy toward them left and right. All right, that's not constitutional, talking crazy. But the way she was trying to come across, she was trying to bait them. And she was big bad, right? And so when the officer was like, hey, move. They didn't want to comply. So he tried to open the door up, and then she drove off, Renee Good. And she got shot because he was trying to say, hey, man, look, he was trying to protect his own life. and trying to protect the officer's life. He don't know what direction she's going to go. Oh, people don't want to hear all that, right? But to Kaya, right? Oh my goodness, she shoplifted. What they got to dare and do with anything, right? He put himself in front of the car. Oh, well, she shouldn't have done. Oh, why didn't they sit there and just follow her? Where was she going to go? Where was a Black American woman going to go? It's not like they didn't have her already where she stayed at, right? They have her picture on the darn thing. They would have found her, right? Nope. See how it goes, right? Black American is a poster, is looked at as a poster to destroy. Yes, Black Americans are like a poster. They look at the poster to destroy, right?
The defense to argue that the vehicle was a weapon that could have harmed him, and therefore he is justified in using deadly force. And so it seemed to make sense, at least how the defense argued it, and the result that we see.
Wow. You said it go. You see how you're like, so Renee Good, again, can run into an officer and people lose their minds, and they're not making excuses for that. Oh, people making numbers of people making excuses for that. Well, he should have shot her, but Takaya gets shot for supposedly shoplifting. She gets shot to unalivement, and she shouldn't have did that. But Renee Good and her awful looking wife, bossy wife, trying to think she was big bad toward the ICE officer and however other officers, and the officer wanted Renee Good to get out the way. She was impeding official immigration duties. She didn't want to comply. She sits there and drives off and stuff like that. He shoots into the car, unalives her, and you got national outrage by various people. Takaya sits there and gets shot to unalivement, and it's her problem. Oh, well, she shouldn't have did what she did. She should have complied. Man, I'm telling you, this system is blatant anti-Black American. Right? And unfortunately, even by certain numbers of Black Americanism, and especially by some tethers. Right? So let's go ahead and just like going into this particular gentleman who, give me a second here. Oh, before I go there, no, let me play him first. If I go anywhere else. Oh, you know what? Let me play Keith Porter's daughter, the Black American man that was shot in California by what's supposed to be a ICE officer who came outside and supposedly had told him to stop firing in the air. Right? And you had people that were going crazy on him. May his soul rest, by the way. Said, oh my goodness, he should have been shooting, in the air. Again, they don't say that to those Anglo personnel who shooting the arrow. Many of them shooting the arrow on New Year's Day, on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and even afterwards. They don't sit there and tell numbers of them who fire in the air like that. Bullets don't have names. They don't tell numbers of, certain numbers of within Hispanism, especially certain numbers of Mexicans who shoot. Oh, there are some Black Americans I'm talking about, who numbers of Mexicans who shoot in the air themselves on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. They shoot their weapons in the air. Bullets don't have names. You don't sit there and hear nobody telling them, oh, that's felony kind of stuff. They should be doing that. Both have it's however other cultures do that, but predominantly it's going to be numbers of Anglos. It's going to be numbers of within a certain type of Hispanicism, predominantly most Mexicans. The numbers one who do that is what I'm saying, who shoot their weapons in their air on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. They're not told the same thing. They're not sitting there. You don't hear nobody jumping up and down, forcing people jumping up and down and sitting there going outside and shooting them like that to unalivement. And excuses being made. Have you noticed that? And then the way it was presented, he was sitting there. Keith Porter. It was saying, "Oh my goodness, the lying ass little." I almost said the word. The lying particular person, and they found out who the guy's name. And the guy is like his name is like white Hispanicism, or it is a type of white minority person. One of the two. It's either a white minority or, well, actually, it's a white minority regardless. How about that? Either white Spanish minority or a certain other white adjacent minority, right? That they found out, and they found this person anyway. They found out that this person is a bad person, right? And you got people making excuses for him as well. But let's just look, and the witnesses were countering what they were saying, that what the lying piece of crap person was trying to say, right? The reason why he had to shoot him, right? And witness saying that's not what happened. He was not pointing some assaultness type weapon at the per se off-duty ICE personnel. They say he was lying, right? But let's just listen to Keith Porter's daughter.
My name is Renee Porter. My father's name was Keith Porter Jr. My father's dead. He was killed by an off-duty ICE agent. It was unjust. I've seen things I don't like, and I want to remind people that this is real life. This is my real life. This isn't news. This is an article I can just swipe away on. My dad's dead.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you.
Yeah, see, viral footage of Renee Good shot by ICE officer encouraged actors to say his name, inducing Keith Porter's New Year's Eve tragedy to the mainstream. But you see how the little the roughness of the Renee Good and her atrocious looking wife, bossy looking, authority, masculine type wife, right? Or Renee Good, how they look and stuff like that, right? And all kind of hell and chaos is breaking out and protests in various parts of America, right, over that. But Keith Porter, who was shot before Renee Good by ICE officer, and I think I was reading some that he might have been the first casualty by an ICE officer who took the life of an American citizen. I think I read some. He might be the first American citizen shot to unalignment by ICE officer, right? There's been no public release. They said there's been no public release of any camera. Oh, you best believe somebody had cameras. Somebody had something, man. Somebody. Now there's a variable of margins that could be not. I think also could be there might be some other people have some information, right? Now, are they going to play the snitches get stitches type situation? Because if this was an Anglo male, and they are definitely, numbers of them shoot their boom boom piece of equipment on New Year's Day and New Year's Eve, the ones who do this. Oh, you best believe if that would have been a black man ICE officer who did the same exact thing, oh, you best believe somebody can produce some kind of cell phone camera or some kind of camera that somebody's playing. Oh, you're going to find some kind of video of something, right? So I sit there and showed you those two, but at the same time, right, Black American woman, she gets sit there, Takaya, she gets unalive, so for supposedly trying to drive into an enforcement person after she supposedly allegedly was shoplifting, but at the same time, right, oh, she was responsible for that, right? But at the same time, it's not blurred out over, oh my goodness, he should have been doing that to her. He should have just let her go up and they would have found her later on. Nope. And Keith Porter, right? Mind his business. So like I said, celebratory, boom, boom into the sky, right? Not pointing nobody. Well, he shouldn't have been doing that. Bullets have names. But when numbers of Anglo personnel, males do this, and maybe some Anglo women who do the same darn thing on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and numbers, dang sure numbers of Hispanics, specifically more Mexicans, the ones who do this, and maybe some other cultures do that. On New Year's Day, New Year's and New Year's Day, they shooting their boom piece of equipment in the sky. Also, especially Black Americans know what I'm talking about on that, right? Those cultures are not looked at and saying, oh my goodness, they shouldn't be doing that. Nope. Right? You said it's a disgusting game goes. No outrage for Keith Porter whatsoever. Well, he shouldn't be doing that. Oh, you know what? I forgot about this. Let me sit there and show you this either tether or this coon. Let me show this tether, this coon that was making us, that had the nerve to, boy, I'm telling you, right here. Look at this tether or coon. Listen to him.
Talking about Keith Porter, the black man that was unalive by ICE. Well, some things I just don't want to talk about. I'm not your local reporter. If I feel like talking about it, I would. But the fact that I actually did some research, I can't believe y'all just had me waste my time. The man was shooting guns on the holiday into the air. And an off-duty officer, off-duty ICE agent heard him. He was a neighbor. Said, what are those gunshots? Went out there and he's holding a rifle. Buddy tell him put the rifle down. He doesn't. And then allegedly shoots 3 times at the officer. Officer shoots back, kills him. What are we talking about? Ain't no way y'all just had me look.
This is embarrassing. See, again, he's either a tether or sellout. One of the two. Or could be both. So he's making excuses for what it is said that white Hispanic or white adjacent minority who took the life of the ICE officer who took the life of Keith Porter had some possible racismness in him. At the same time, we talking about before he shot Keith Porter. They were saying he had some racial animosity that they found out he was doing. But here's the nerve, these people. He was saying some racial animosity, maybe toward black folks and Latinos. He'd be like, man, you don't go to hell with that game. How are they going to be racist toward Latinos while at the same time he himself was either white or Hispanic himself? I'm just saying, especially by his name. It's more white Hispanic is a name. And say if that's the truth, but they're going to try to add like the black and brown. They really are disgusting in the way that it's disgusting, but it's brilliant in an infantile way how they continue to keep fooling millions of Black Americans, to allow people to dilute Black Americans like they did the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, 14th and the 15th Amendment of the Constitution, how they diluted those laws down. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution was supposed to be about granting across the board Black Americans to have citizenship, right? And the descendants of Black Americans to have citizenship, right? So that's what the 14th Amendment of the Constitution is supposed to be, which is around, I think, I don't know, 1860s, something like that. Now, 1868, I think. The 14th Amendment, around 1868, I think, somewhere around that. And by the way, 1868 is more than 1776, right? So next year, you're going to sit there and have, 260 year anniversary. Oh, no, this year, excuse me. It's supposed to be the 260 year anniversary of the founding of the United States of America, 1776. What was going on in 1776 toward Black Americans? formal segregation. What was going on in 1776 in America, right? Formal hateness toward Black Americans. Huh? What was going on in 1776 toward Black Americans? Black codes was going on. Do you not understand that, people? 1776, toward the ones who may not know, 1776, man, that founding, that you had the colonists that declared their independence from British. Even though how many of the colonists were British immigrants? I mean, the game is the game, people. Black America is not immigrants. Black Americans are the foundation of America. Because Black Americans are all the only truly non-immigrants in America, besides what we call certain ones within Native Americanism. But those are different games in itself, because again, how many numbers of Native Americans are white Native Americans, right? Or how we call Native Americans, we want to play that tactic. I don't want to go there. Let's just say archaeology saying there were people and bones and archaeologist type situations that predate what we call the Mongolian mix Native Americans, right? That were latecomers to the Americas. Oh, we really want to talk about that, right? Or like we talk about the Olmecs, who were the premier first major civilization, what we call Mesoamerica, that predated the Aztecs, right? And they certainly didn't look like Mongolian mixed Native Americans, people. Oh, we don't want to talk about that, right? But back to this tether or sellout. Oh, he don't know anything about the white Hispanic or white adjacent anti-American Black hatred that particular white Hispanic ICE officer or white adjacent officer that have, they saying he had a racist background, perhaps toward Black Americans, and try to ask them, maybe possibly toward Latinos. You be like, man, you don't go to hell with that tactic. Because again, if he was white Hispanic, how the hell he gonna be racist toward other Hispanics, which they may have hated each other? But I don't go into all that. It's a whole different game in itself.
Then that whole side is defending Keith Porter, talking about it's a Black people tradition to go outside and shoot guns in the air on a holiday. It's still illegal. So what do you expect from an officer? Off duty, on duty, it don't matter. What would you expect from an officer to hear illegal activity going on, hearing gunshots going on in the neighborhood, but y'all expected him to go outside and say, the Black people are out. It's their tradition. Let me not interfere. What do you? Then the officer approaches Keith Porter because he's not Black, so he has no idea this is a Black tradition going on. He's just trying to look at a guy that has a rifle in his hand shooting in the air. He says, put the gun down. Keith Porter doesn't put the gun down. Whatever happens, Keith Porter fires at the officer. Officer shoots back. Keith Porter dies. And y'all are mad at the officer?
You see this fool? You see no proof that he was sitting there firing at the officer. Black Americans, 9,000% had no word in history, right? Now, they're defending themselves, somebody shooting back at them. Otherwise than that, Black Americans have never had a history of sitting there pointing, right? Just for the heck out of some enforcement personnel like that. No history like that of any collectiveness, not even halfway. So this tethered coon, take your pick or both, is making excuses. Oh my goodness, that's a Black people collection, Black American. But listen how he's talking. That's a tether or a sellout coon, right? It's a tether or sellout coon. The way he's talking. Oh, we're talking about Black American. I mean, if that's a Black American tradition, that's illegal. Fool. Breaking border immigration laws is illegal. Fool. Interfering with ICE duties, fool, is illegal. Oh, but of course, he's not going to talk about that like that, isn't he? Unless it's a benefit for ratings for him. Right? But you can smell the tether or sellout coon hatred toward Black Americans in his vile skin. You can smell it. He's not going to talk about, well, what about the Anglo officer? What about the Anglo type males who shoot in the air themselves? Or the white Hispanics, but especially numbers of Mexican men, the ones who shoot in the air on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Is he sitting there telling them that's illegal? They shouldn't be doing that. They be like, man, Negro, man, you don't take your nig self ass somewhere else. They be like, who the hell is unimportant Negro? But anyway, I'm not gonna play that no more. But see, this is the hatred, man. This is why I say unfortunate, because so much black pain that's happening to Black Americans, and you got so much tethering people that's against Black Americans because these tethers flee and they can't get their own corruption together. They can't get their tribalism to go together. You got, however, personnel from certain parts of the beautiful Caribbean islands, the ones applies to, who also have tethered and stuff like that off of Black Americans, the ones applies to. You got ones that would not stand for Cuba. You got Cuba is one of the biggest islands in the Caribbean, but there is no pan-Caribbean love whatsoever, right? At all, right? But something dealing with Black Americans, you got people that want to pile on toward Black Americans, but they can't fix the Caribbean tribalism, Caribbean island tribalism going on. You see how this goes, right? Oh, wrong one. You see how, wrong button. Give me a second. Give me one moment. Give me one moment. Okay. So you see how this game goes, right? You got immigration personnel who fled themselves, who have a hatred for Black Americans, but they're given however money and resources to put their businesses in certain sections of Black American neighborhoods, right? And just modern day, they put certain businesses or allow certain businesses in certain neighborhoods of non-Black, but that has to be a certain type, right? A extremely certain type. The majority of the time, oh no, those businesses that various types of immigration personnel have these little, anyway, going on that. They're put in predominantly Black neighborhoods in general, right? If they're not in a certain stereotype version of certain business they put in Black neighborhoods, you best believe there are still policies and codes of certain businesses that will not be allowed to be put in gigantically Anglo well-to-do neighborhoods, right? So this goes, it's an insultingness. Let me see what I want to play here next. Get one fun one playing. One second, hero. One moment, hero. See what I'll play, hero. Just one last thing for Keith Porter. As you see here, Los Angeles Enforcement Commission grilled about fatal ICE officer involved shooting of a California Black man, right? Crowds gathered Tuesday morning to grill LA Police Commission on the fatal immigration enforcement officer involved shooting of a man, a Black man in the San Fernando Valley that occurred on New Year's Eve, one that federal officials say was warranted and family members and activists claim was unjust. Right, the shooting occurred in the 17,000 block of Roscoe Boulevard in Northridge around 10:30 p.m. on December 31st, 2025. The LAPD said department spokesman told such at the time that the report which came into dispatch was that a man was firing rounds into the air. Right, when officers arrived at the department complex, when the call came in, they discovered a Black man, suffered from a gunshot wound. He was pronounced unalive at the scene. Preliminary information from early on investigation indicated the person involved, the Black man involved in the shooting wasn't indicated that the person involved in the shooting was an off-duty ICE federal agent. First reports pointing towards him being an officer with the department. You get the point. But it was later confirmed by federal officials that he was an immigration and customs enforcement agent. On December 31st, 2025, an off-duty ICE officer bravely, you see how they do this? You see how they do this? He bravely responded to an active shooter situation. You see what these people are doing? Right? You see the paranoia on this? Active duty here, active duty shooter, active duty. But who is the number one school shooting type people? The number one active duty, active shooter people. Who is number one? Numbers of Anglo males. Where is the animosity? Where is the shaming toward numbers of Anglo males about that, right? Where is the double looking at Anglo males every day, watching them to see if they're going to do something wrong? Nope. Because people have been programmed to look at various numbers of Anglo males as gods. It's a deep-seated internal thing, right? But at the same time, black on black crime, black on black crime, black on black crime, black on crime. And the number one thing here people talk about black on black crime is murder. Do you understand that? That's the number one thing. But then you look at statistics and you say, what about white on white crime, white on white murders? Right? It is not a gigantic big difference between murdering under the criminality of black and the criminality of white. There's not a gigantic difference. When the assailants were black and the assailants were white, it's not a gigantic difference. But they don't want to talk about white on white crime. Right? And what about the horrific crime of RAPE? That's committed atrociously several times more by those Anglo males. They don't want to talk about that. What about white collar crime? Huh? Oh, drug offenses? Oh, and by the way, because that's one other thing. They love trying to sit there and put black Americans in some kind of drug offense situation. But the number one people who are arrested and charged for drug offenses are numbers of Anglo males and women. I mean, several times more. But they don't want to talk about that. And that is the fault, unfortunately, for certain types of black Americans who allow these people to dictate what is talked about. See, they don't know it's a small number of black Americans who see through the tactics. See, again, some things you can't run from. You can't run from that. Right? Now, don't get me wrong. There are some black males who saying, forget this, and they're going to other countries and enjoying themselves, and salute to those black American males who are able to, let me phrase that, not only able to, but they want to, and they were able to do that. Right? And say, well, they're not going to worry about too much of this racism going on, but there's all different problems in other countries, right? That you best believe black Americans better be on their P's and Q's on some of these countries, right? Because black American males, you best believe they ain't going to break no immigration laws on other countries. Oh, you best believe that, right? But here's the problem. Doesn't matter what country a black American go to, first still black American. And depending on what country you go to, they still stand out. So you're never supposed to forget that you are a black American, regardless. And this happens to be another country. See, another culture can go, that person can come from India, from Syria, Lebanon, Nigeria, Ghana. You get the point. Iran, China, Cambodia, Vietnam, Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Romania, right? You get the point, right? Portugal, Sweden, Denmark, Montenegro, right? You get the point. And they come over to America, they don't forget where they come from. But black Americans are told, if you overall leave America, you must leave your black Americanness over. You must leave in America. But at the same time, how many of these cultures in other different countries play bad versions of hip hop and think that's what real hip hop is? Because they know it's not enough black Americans say, no. This is not what you think black American music is. Black American music is also jazz, people. Nobody created jazz but black Americans. They were the foundation of jazz music first, and then Anglos copied as how many person have done before. Rock and roll came from black Americans first. Came from black Americans. Funk music, soul music, right? Blues, right? Came from black Americans. And hip hop that is usually shown now more is a bad version of hip hop. As if hip hop didn't have a coalition also of constructive hip hop. Oh, notice how many places, many parts of different parts of this world, they don't play constructive hip hop because most people are not sitting there. Most Black Americans are not sitting there relating to people that say, hey, you know what? You need to put this in your playlist too, not just the bad version of hip hop. But those are different topics in itself. So on that. Anyway, you know what? I don't want to read no more of this on that part. I don't want to read no more of this. Because again, it's the insulting, right? How they try to make it seem like that the off-duty person, non-Black, he was such a braveness. But watch this for a second. But Renee Good and her awful-looking wife, bossy-looking, masculine wife, knowing what they were doing was wrong, they sit there and say that ICE officer was bravenly sitting there trying to sit there and protect the officers and other people. Nope. You see how this game goes, right, people? Disgusting tactic, man, but it's a brilliant tactic. On that, I don't have too many more things I want to play on this. Let me see here. Give me one moment. Hero. Oh, almost finished, actually. One other thing I want to play after this. This Renee Good's wife, the rough-looking masculine wife, claimed Minneapolis shooting was her fault. Oh, you see that again? Let's look at this again. What did it say? Renee Good's wife claimed Minneapolis shooting was her fault in a video of being anti-ICE theory. Any interesting anti-ICE theory? As long as dealing with immigration, because you got these ferocious-minded people that do not want any type of immigration enforcement at all. They want open borders. And some of these fools out there don't understand. It's because there are numbers of Anglo-American citizens out here that are fools that are sitting there going crazy. Once applied, they're going crazy at this, and they don't understand they're being used. Right? Fools. But then we start talking about, hey, what are you going to do about this blatant anti-Black American hate? Huh? That's happening every day by bad seeds. Huh? Oh, we ain't worried about that. Well, Black people, those Black people always committing crimes. Says what? Says who statistics? Right? Huh? You see how this game goes. And you know it's not no Black Americans call these little disturbing little cretins out when they play that tactic. Right? But you see what it says? She. Oh, what I'm saying is that you say, what about these bad seeds doing stuff to Black Americans? What I don't see you sitting there telling your officials, your political personnel, we demand to rid automatic immunity toward bad seeds. We want to rid that, right? We demand that your political figures sit there and rid automatic impunity against these bad seeds. No, well, see how that goes, right? See how that goes. They don't hear all that because it's not happening to their people like that. And even when it sometimes it happens, some bad seeds done some bad things to some Anglos. Oh, they pissed off, and I've heard some. You've heard some people too. Oh my goodness. And they're mad at some of these bad officials that have done some bad stuff to Anglo personnel by numbers of Anglo bad seeds, right? You see how it goes, right? But it's not a racial thing. But at the same time, they want to sit there and justice that part. But you start talking about Black Americans who have been the number one hated group, right? By slave patrol bad seed ones. You got people that like they don't know nothing. So what did it say here? This person characterized the fatal shooting of Minneapolis Anglo woman by federal agents as an act of domestic terrorism, alleged that the driver had been stalking, impeding, and blocking ICE officers for hours leading up to the incident. You got these crazy warp-type people act like they don't see that part, right? Video from the scene shows Renee Good's horrendous-looking, bossy-looking, masculation-type wife Rebecca Browngood, in distress immediately after the shooting, saying she encouraged Renee to attend the location where ICE agents were operating. In the video taken by such and such, she can be heard saying she made Renee Good come down. It's her fault. Conversation should have been done. She was the main responsibility person behind why Renee Good got shot by the officer. She. Do you not see what it says in the video taken by such and such? She can be heard saying she, Rebecca Brown Good, Renee Good's wife, right? Renee Good's wife, Rebecca Good, right? Rebecca Good, right? Being the wife of Renee Good. Renee Brown Goods saying specifically, she made Renee Brown come down there. It's Renee Brown Goods' fault. And you got people that don't even know that, or acting so naive that they want to pretend that they don't want to see it. Conversation should have been done with, right? I think there's 2 more other quick videos for this, but oh well, but we won't pretend, we won't act like this. Some people.
Nothing. I know nothing.
Right? You said it. See how that game goes, right? So let me share them. There's I think one or two other one I want to play. Hero, give me a second. Hero. Man, there's one. Give me one moment. Hero. Give me one moment. Something else I wanted to show. Learn a lesson from. Give me one moment. Okay, Porter one. No, I played that already. Give me one moment. Hero. Okay, here we go. This one. And I'm playing videos under fair usage doctrine. And what does it say here? Mainstream media, to my predominant Anglo media, lies about ICE shooting, video of Renee Good, playing this as time, peace, purpose, and under fair usage doctrine.
Well, by now, everyone has had an opportunity to review the footage of the shooting death of Renee Good, who was killed by an ICE officer while driving toward him in her car in Minneapolis, Minnesota last week. Now, we've seen footage from different angles and at different speeds. We've seen it from different perspectives. Finally, we've been able to see and hear what happened immediately before and after the shooting. New footage emerged on Friday afternoon, and we've not had the opportunity to address it on Rising yet, so let's watch and react.
I'm not mad, boy. Show your face. I'm not mad. That's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Now, this new footage does clear up some popular misconceptions. It does not appear, for instance, that Good received conflicting instructions from the officers. What it looks and sounds like is that she was following her partner's instructions to flee the scene. That line, "Drive, baby, drive," which was spoken by her wife, very telling. Now, the new footage does not necessarily answer, however, the only relevant question, which is whether the officer who shot and killed Good, Jonathan Ross, had a reasonable fear for his life. That's the standard. So many in the media are getting this wrong and stating that he shouldn't have fired on Good for trying to flee the scene, which is true. Fleeing the scene on its own is not a satisfactory reason for him to shoot at her. He was entitled to shoot, however, if her vehicle was headed toward him and he thought she was going to mow him down, even if she wasn't planning to do that, and even if getting out of the way was, in hindsight, a better option.
Look at that again.
At different speeds, we've seen the result and went opportunity. Now we've been able to see shooting.
I'm not mad, boy. Show your face. I'm not mad. That's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy.
Look at that. Manliness. Straight manliness in that relationship. Well, both of them look masculine. Both of them look masculine, right? But look at her. Look at Renee Good's wife, right? You big boy, y'all tough, big boy, right? See, they can play tough. See, they play that. See, in America, this is the only main country on this planet where you can have women like this, right? And none alternative lifestyle category women that I'm talking the ones it applies to, right? That can talk crazy like this overall in certain other westernized societies as well. But within Americanism is the top one that people feel entitled to be able to say whatever they want to say, right? To however enforcing people. Now, again, we're not talking about constitutionary right, because there are bad seeds who think because they have a uniform on that this allows them to break constitutionary laws, right? Which that kind of person should be held on a higher ground of criminality when they sit there and break constitutionary law. Will they tell people, non-enforcing people, ignorance of the law, right? And so it's not an excuse as if you got regular people supposed to know something about law, right? You said it. You see how that goes. But when you are going through training as an enforcement person, and you go through what's supposed to be the penal codes and however other things. Now, of course, they're not lawyer based, but the problem is again they are going to release certain numbers of however penal code parts that they are going over, and so when they knowingly, right? Because remember, it's a law, right? Even though you've been going, these bad seeds are going over those penal codes. Knowing that they're breaking them, knowingly they're breaking constitutionary law when they're sitting there trying to override a citizen's constitutionary law. So when that enforcement person does that, that means that they should be held at a higher criminalityness, right? But of course they're not, because then they claim, basically identity, what is the word? Indemnityness. Are claiming to be impunity or impunity in the defense, right? Right, so it goes. This is what, but see, and they clam up real fast. Hey, what happened? They don't want to talk about that because they get with their however personnel, right? And they make sure to get themselves to calm down off of whatever happened, be if they was right or wrong. But then when situations happen with a regular citizen, they're expected to open their mouths up and just open their mouth and just blur out. Something's wrong with that whole picture, but those are different topics in itself, right? But again, you see in this picture, rough looking wife or Renee Goods, both of them looking rough, right? And however numbers of women within certain sections of Panamese culture, regardless, the one applies to have a knownness of thinking, have a privilegedness, and just like unfortunately certain type of Sister of Chaos members in America have a privilegedness, right? Not a real privilege, it's a pseudo privilege, it's not a true one, but they think they control things against Black American males collectively, but not against numbers of Anglo women overall, right? And so in this society overall either, but those are different topics in itself that can talk crazy to their males, but better not go to various other countries and think they're going to talk that same stuff as like these Sisters of Chaos talk to Black males. They wouldn't dare go to another country and talk that kind of crazy stuff to quite a number of countries. Not going to play this. Numbers of Anglo women, better, the ones that supply to, because there are certain numbers of westernized countries that are being scabbed up with feminism more too, right? But we're talking about quite a number of other countries that ain't playing that feminism tactic, right? Because feminism tactic is the way that controllers are trying to control more against masculinity in various other countries. Those are different games in itself. But still within Americanism is the top rated feminist headquarters, right? On a situation. So they become more privileged in thinking that, and the United States is a small country compared to the rest of almost 200 some plus countries, recognized countries, right? It's a very small country. It's a very powerful country, but it's still a very small country. And the thing about it is there are certain numbers of Anglo women, quite a number, the ones this applies to, that do have a privileged mentality because for so long they have had the social, economic, politicalness to fall back on, to use they are princess mentalityness, or no matter what, by the outside appearances, whether right or wrong, they know they can be the poorest of an Anglo woman and still have more rights than a Black American rich man or middle-class Black man. Do you understand that? They know that. It's ingrained. But the problem is that they know that if numbers of Anglo males, regardless if they were poor Anglo males, still have in society a social constructed benefit based upon the non-melanation that was still set up in this country in 1776 still, and before and afterwards, right? There is a system that's set up for that. And numbers of Anglo women understand that many of them, they don't even want to be married. They really don't even want to be in a relationship with numbers of Anglo males, modern day even more, right? They wish they can have one-to-woman land. Or many of them would really probably want to talk to some other cultures, but they know they wouldn't have the social benefit or political benefit or the true progenitors of DEI. They won't have any more of that benefit. They want to keep that benefit. They want to keep the affirmative action benefit, right? They want to have the double minority of being Anglo woman first, right? And then can get into the pot and sit there and say woman first. I mean, say woman and then claim minority, right? You see how that game goes. See, they know that there is a benefit regardless. And again, there are certain numbers of Anglo women who are not like that, but we're talking about a collectiveness, people. So we're not going to play that, well, it's not all game. We're talking about collectively, people, on this. Let's continue.
Go ahead. Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car. Whoa.
But you're going to have personnel that act like this.
I know nothing.
That's right. And again, you got people that want open borders. And who is the top type of immigration personnel? Hispanicism. And who is the number one person within that? Mexicans. Or they make up the number one related to Latinoism is Hispanics. And what should I say? Mexicans make up the number one demographics within Latinness and Hispanicism is Mexicans, right? Because they still think that this is what they call Absalon, which is a whole different topic, which means the retaking over of the Southwest United States, because they think this is Mexico. I'm like, those fools are fools, right? When Mexico, when you're talking about the people of white Hispanicism sold out various parts of Mexico, right? For people don't know. And what was Mexico before Mexico? They fools. 500 years ago, there was no such thing as Mexico, people. Are you crazy? There was no such thing around 500 years ago as a place called, as the country what we call Mexico. There was no Mexico, people. Right? Because you're talking about a little bit close to that time on that situation before the Spanish came to the Americas. You're talking about the Aztecs were the last great civilization, right? Until Hernan Cortez came over there around 1519, people, right? So Montezuma, the Montezuma clan, right? That was over those places there, right? The Aztecs who Montezuma clan, who was over the Aztecs, they want to call themselves Mexicans, and they surely want to call that area Mexicans, right? The Toltecs, that was before them, the Mixtecs, right? The Zapotecs, you get the point, wouldn't call themselves Mexicans, and they want to call that area Mexico people. What about the other, what we call parentheses, indigenous people that are over there before the word Mexico came in existence? But again, the game is the game on that, right? But I don't want to go into all that. When I make this point, this system wants more certain type of Hispanicism, right? On this. Prior to 2000, in general, plus or minus, it was the three largest cultures was Black Americans, Anglo-Americans and Anglo-adjacent, that's a whole different topic, Black Americans, and three what we call Native Americans. Those are the only three major, the largest cultures in general, right? And the fourth one was Hispanicism, which is a very broad category, by the way. It's a whole different game in itself. He said, what does a Hispanic person look like? Because there's Afro-Hispanics. But those are games in itself on that. I don't want to go into all that. But the point is, somewhere close to 2000 plus or minus, right, when certain people, certain controllers wanted more Hispanicism. And so now what we call the Hispanicism, again, that game in itself, now are the second largest population, and Black Americans have failed to the third largest population. And we call Asians, what they're supposed to be, because there's Afro-Asian people, and also, like I said earlier in the show, Armenians are considered Asian. You don't hear Armenians walk around talking about they're Asian. You don't hear somebody from Iraq saying they're Asian. You don't hear nobody saying from Iran saying they're Asian. You see how this game goes. So there's a certain stereotype look of what we consider Asians. But again, those are games in itself, because there was caste system Asianness in America. And you got quite a number of Asians who don't like other Asians in America. But those are games in itself that they sit there and perpetrate a fragilistic mentality in front of people, right? To act like there's some pan-Asian love, and it's not, right? You have darker skinned personnel in various parts of Asia who, knowing that there is more people who look more toward white Asianness than the various other Asianness who have some color to their skin, right? White Asian skin is more looked at as desirable than some of the colorness of skin on various types of other Asians, right? Oh, we don't talk about that. But people play this little generic Asian card in America, right? And play model minority tactic, right? It could be with all that person wouldn't have fled themselves, right? Which is a whole different game in itself. So like this particular person right here under white Hispanicism, let the Negro fight his own battles. His problems are not mine. I don't want to ally with him. Felix Terragino, the white Mexican American president of LULAC, 1956-1960. And by the way, when you look at that date right there, Martin Luther King was catching hell in that time frame. The I Have Dreams speech was in those 60s. Just like the Mount Top speech was in the 60s, right? Before he got assassinated, right? So 1960s, that this white Mexican American that said this anti-Black Americanism rhetoric, Martin Luther King was catching hell. But they got to benefit off of Martin Luther King. You see how that game goes. But they know that there are some foolishness on certain numbers of Black Americans who will fight for immigration rights. They supposed to have no rights like that in compared to any type thing with Black Americans. How are you going to have rights in America as a border breaking legal immigrant when if Black Americans go across that border or some other country and you're not a citizen or you don't have a legal right to be there and you think those people are going to roll out the carpet of humanity for Black Americans? Mm-mm. And these people know, various people know in America that, unfortunately, again, millions of Black Americans do have some gullibility-ness related to immigrationists, with small exceptions who know the game. Unfortunately. And I say this before I play this last video, because again, for so much Black American pain that's messed up quite a number of Black Americans in this modern day, because Black Americans have forgotten who they truly are, which is the most magnificent, powerful people in America's history. Well, if that's the case, how come? No, we ain't gonna play that. We ain't gonna play that. Notice how they don't say it to what we call Native Americans, who have been pounded up, messed over around so many by numbers of white personnel, right? But when you say Native Americans, that's still held up in some kind of high esteem, right? Oh, those are the first people. Says who? When archaeologists saying there already been bones and other archaeologist type of things that were already predated what we call Native Americans who came across the Bering Strait. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. But no one compares to Black Americans in the history and the achievements and the patents and the patrioticness in America. Nobody. See, think about if Black Americans were fleers and scammers and all stuff like that, violent all over the place. Oh, you best believe Black Americans wouldn't just be the Black Americans not like that, right? Black Americans never been collectively like somebody trying to get over people. Nope. Never. Never like that. Black Americans collectively, it's like, hey man, just leave Black Americans alone. Let Black Americans do their thing. Or you know what? Better yet, give what is earned to Black Americans like you give to what we call Native Americans. Once you give all those multi-millions to billions of dollars of resources that's been given for however long, right? Because the Trail of Tears, what we call Native American Trail of Tears, was around 1820, 1830. That's 200-something years ago. And all these years, how much of this money been going to what we call Native Americanism? Talking about the white man took our land, white man this, white man did that, white man broke treaties, right? And you got a Bureau of Indian Affairs that distributes higher resources and higher other entities that sit there and play the game and get all these resources for how many of the native tribes. And you got people from various parts of Angloism don't say we ain't got anything to do with removing Native Americans from their reservation. They say nothing about that. All this reparations going toward we call Native Americans, but they have a freaking problem with Black Americans being reparations. And they know Black Americans, unfortunately, collectively are very naive to sit there and not call this stuff out. This is how you gonna sit there and tell Black Americans they shouldn't get reparations when you say nothing about numbers of Native Americans getting paid, getting all these resources, huh? And then border breaking legal immigrants getting these resources. Numbers of immigration personnel that have been allowed to come over to sit there also play games, stuff like that, getting free money, resources, huh? Allowing tethers to come over and try to infiltrate various politicalness, various areas in America to misplace Black Americans, right? And it's like, and ain't no numbers of Black Americans collective don't even see these games, with few exceptions. Last thing I want to sit there and show is some of this gentleman's show. Great podcast he does as well. That he's been doing this for quite a long time on this. Let me see here. Give me one moment here. This is the last thing I'm going to show. Maybe if I find it. Is that it? I don't. Give me a second here. I think this is right here. This is right here. So this is the last thing I'm going to show on this. This fourth, I'm just gonna play this. So probably only a few minutes of this. All right, there we go. I'm playing this under fair usage doctrine.
Very disturbing video posted on X causing public outrage shows agents approaching this red SUV as it was blocking the road. You can hear the agents tell the woman to get out of the car and approach the SUV. No! The woman then drives forward. That's when the shots are fired, the car crashing.
I'm not going to say that she's totally innocent because she's possibly could have seen someone in front of her, but I don't think so because she was looking at this way while he was snatching on her car like, hey, this person's in front. I can't see no one in front of me right now. So it could have been on her mistake too. You know, I'm not saying it's totally their fault. I'm saying it's their fault because they shouldn't have had to fire a shot. You shouldn't have to shoot an old lady.
A lot of people are disgusted over this incident.
Oh, by the way, and you heard, do you hear what he said? So either he's a sellout, a naive Black male, the one this applies to, he could be a tether too. You hear what he said? Oh, my, oh, like who he said, old lady. So that tells you he don't know what the hell he's talking about, right? But you see the mentality, right? It's something that has been put in modern day millions within Black Americanism. This applies to something that has been messed off, and certain sections of Black Americanism to really be off. They'll be like, oh my goodness, we got to show humanity. Why? Humanity has not been shown to Black Americans in centuries. And while Black Americans are fighting, one applies to, are fighting these other groups who don't give a damn about Black Americans, right? Something's off about certain sections of Black Americanism. It's like, what in the HELL is wrong with certain numbers of Black Americans? And it is a brilliantness of studying of psychology to see when you have millions of personnel within American Blackism who it's something that has been inundated to sit there and distance itself from its own collective growing. If it's for its own self-protection, for its own self-developing, right? To see its own culture grow. But it's the opposite, to not want to see its American Blacks grow, to not see the self-development necessary more to empower Black American more. It's like something has been so off within Black Americans collectively, besides some small numbers of Black Americans who are not going to fall for that. Right? Wow.
But I think the most disgusting thing of all is how certain politicians like Jacob Fry are all outraged all of a sudden. They suddenly discovered their moral outrage at law enforcement killing someone.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull. There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
We've been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt, and today that recklessness cost someone their life.
Black people are the majority of victims of police murder, and they weren't behind the wheel of a car. They're usually citizens in the corner store, walking down the street, or even in their own homes. Jacob Fry's never had this kind of energy for any of them, especially not if they were killed at the hands of the thugs in the Minneapolis police. Hell, he was going ahead and backing the badge heavy just last year alone. He wasn't angry when the criminals behind him murdered Jamar Clark. He damn sure wasn't angry when George Floyd was killed. He was telling the public, oh, we need to calm down and everything, you know, let's the investigation play out. Now, all of a sudden, he's trying to have all of this judgment up front. Now he wants to go ahead and have judgment. He backed the badge when it came to the murder of George Floyd and the killings of other Black Minneapolis citizens ever since. If people in Minneapolis are furious, then they can save some of their outrage for this punk. He helped to set the table for all of this. Even after the murder of George Floyd, Fry's been standing by the cops and defying the people of Minneapolis. And now that a white woman is killed by armed thugs from outside Minneapolis, now all of a sudden he wants to get all profane for the cameras. Well, he can spare me. When you give your support to local murders by thugs with badges, don't be surprised when some out-of-towners with badges do the same thing. You better believe that had this woman been Black, that same Jacob Fry would be doing what he did with George Floyd, calling for calm. He certainly wouldn't be cursing. Oh, the outrage would be a hell of a lot more muted. In fact, there wouldn't be any outrage at all. It'd just be him going, you know, this is sad, just so sad. But we need to be calm. It's just so sad. Had the victim been Black, the white media would be telling you any and every bit of dirt that they could possibly find on this woman. In fact, that's what all the coverage would be. They would be leading with, oh, she had a record, or she was accused of this, or she had some priors on that. That's what they would be leading with if this woman had been Black. Jacob Fry and that scumbag behind him, they were strident, just their typically arrogant white supremacist selves when Black people were pointing out police murders in Minneapolis. But a white woman's killed, and now we see the phony outrage? Sounds more like jealousy from Jacob Fry than anything else. Because this guy, they're like any local politicians. They get angry whenever somebody else intrudes on their turf. No poaching on my territory. That's what he's really upset about. But if the federal government gave him some money, I bet you he'd be behind them all the way. And this monkey Fry, he's not the only one doing this. You got the rest of the clapping chimpanzees in the white media who've decided that all of a sudden they have some moral outrage at police action all of a sudden. This is the exact same white media who spent year after year, amounting to decade after decade, saying that you can't second guess the police. Why, the police do a dangerous job. When police kill a black person, we get a nonstop litany of any dirt that they can find. They bring on the police to white-splain why you can't question the police. It's all about the training. You don't know what goes through a cop's mind. You can't hold us accountable no matter what we do. That's what the white media does whenever the victim's black. They bring on the cops and let them go ahead and say whatever they want. The white media did that for year on year, but of course they only do that when the victim's black. So why aren't they bringing on the police chiefs now? Or every moron with a badge that they can find to white-splain to the public why the police are just using their training? What happened in Minneapolis? That was an issue of police training. If you have any complaints, you should complain about the training. They're just doing what they're trained to do.
Our officer followed his training, did exactly what he's been taught to do in that situation, and took actions to defend himself and defend his fellow law enforcement officers. You asked about a shooting that we just had in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was an act of domestic terrorism. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him. This goes to show the assaults that our ICE officers and our law enforcement are under every single day.
That's what Kristi Noem said, the discount Temu version of Barbie. She's sitting there recycling that old saw. And yet the same people who were giving it thumbs up just a few years ago, now all of a sudden, we're not so sure. What kind of training is this? Who's going to tell the public that police should follow their training now? All the usual excuses and lies that we've heard are suddenly being dispensed with. Gee, I wonder why. Now, there's been incidents like this before. ICE agents have fired on people and even killed people who they claimed were trying to run them over with their car. Back in July of last year in Black Forest, Colorado, 2 people were the target of a law enforcement operation at a home construction site, and they allegedly attempted to ram their vehicle into ICE officers. An officer fired 3 shots into the vehicle. 2 of the people fled, at least 1 was later arrested. In September, an ICE agent in Chicago fatally shot a man who tried to evade arrest by driving his car at agents, dragging one of them. ICE identified the man as Silverio Villegas Gonzalez and said he had a history of reckless driving and had entered the country illegally. And speaking of people in the country illegally, in October, federal authorities said a TikTok streamer and illegal alien by the name of Carlitos Ricardo Parias tried to ram his vehicle into theirs while they were trying to arrest him on an immigration warrant. They wound up shooting him in the elbow. This illegal alien had amassed a large following on TikTok, making videos documenting immigration raids. Well, that shows just how confident this guy was that the authorities were never going to come for him. That's how comfortable a lot of these illegal aliens have become. It's like, hey, we'll go ahead and just stand here and we'll video the authorities arresting illegal aliens, but they're not going to come and arrest us. Well, in this case, he was wrong. He was arrested, but fortunately for him, he was in the People's Republic of California when it happened, and a U.S. District Court judge dismissed the indictment against this illegal alien, saying that his rights had been violated because federal authorities didn't allow his defense attorneys to visit him or speak with him while he was in immigration detention. So if an illegal alien doesn't get to talk to their attorney while they're in detention, that nullifies the fact that they're in the country illegally? Apparently so. In Ontario, California, in October, an immigration agent shot a man in the shoulder as he drove away from federal agents. The man's lawyer said an agent pulled out pepper spray, and the man tried to maneuver his vehicle to get around and was shot through the back passenger window. ICE said that the officer feared for his life and fired defensive shots at the vehicle. Nobody was second-guessing that. In December, just outside of Baltimore, a traffic stop ended with an illegal alien being shot and another injured by ICE agents after the driver of the van drove at the officers, prompting them to open fire. Both the driver and the passenger are expected to recover. And just a little over 2 weeks ago, there was a person shot by ICE in Minnesota. St. Paul, Minnesota, to be exact. That's just across the river from Minneapolis. ICE agents were pursuing an illegal alien who tried to flee in a vehicle. The man struck multiple agents as he fled. One agent fired shots. The man was taken into custody. Now, that was just a little over 2 weeks ago when this incident occurred. Now, since it was only 2 weeks ago, everybody remembers how the mayor of St. Paul was incensed at this and cursing on camera about it and telling ICE to get the F out of his city. Remember how next door in Minneapolis, Jacob Fry took a break from kissing the thugs and blues rumps to curse for the cameras and tell ICE to get the F out of the Twin Cities? Anyone remember how Governor Tim Walz took time away from his failing re-election campaign so he could show his outrage for the cameras too? Me neither. Now, there's been multiple incidents where ICE have shot and even killed people, and we didn't see this kind of outrage being shown, but we all know the reason why. Illegal aliens getting shot, well, these are brown people, even if they don't think they're brown. But hey, as long as you're not killing any white people, it's okay. News reports are that there's protests, but understand, ICE has been steadily shooting people since at least last summer and even killed some folks. Where were the protests then? Where was the massive news coverage then? Sure, you can point to the killing being caught on camera and say that that's the reason why this is different, but is that really the reason? Because that Parias individual, he was on camera too at the time he got arrested. And for the shills, plants, and morons out there, I'm not saying that this woman deserved what happened to her. I'm saying that if she was black, you wouldn't be seeing her given all of this understanding or consideration or sympathy. The white authorities like Jacob Fry would do what he's been doing for the last few years, boldly taking the side of the thugs in blue, and the white media would be defaming the victim, justifying the killing, and bringing on any cop or lawyer they could find to white-splain why nothing should be done about it. How, well, this is just the messy side of the business. After all, these people, they're highly trained and you can't question the training. It's a training issue. You can't argue with the training. You want to be angry about something, be angry about the training, but this is the training they get. Justine Demond was a white woman shot by a Somalian cop, and the city couldn't wait to give her the biggest payout they'd ever given to a victim of police violence. Meanwhile, the cops routinely murder black citizens under circumstances far more egregious, and the city fought it tooth and claw. And the payouts were far, far less than what that white woman Justine Demond got. And unlike George Floyd or the countless other black victims of police killings, Justine Demond's death wasn't on camera. No cell phone video, no body camera footage, nothing. And yet the white authorities in Minnesota, they were tripping over their shoelaces, treating this like a 5-alarm fire that they had to respond to immediately. Now, why were they so eager to just roll over and they just couldn't wait to do a payout? Why did the white media not smear her like they have every other black person that they talked about? Where was the white police officers union to stick up for Mohammed Noor and to run Justine Demond's name through the mud? We all know the answer to that, and the answer is clear. Only white lives matter. A black person is harmed, they're siding with the cops. A white person is harmed, particularly a white woman, well, the world has to stop spinning and we got to take action. We got to get justice here. If this white woman's life mattered, then don't treat her any differently or any more importantly than every other black person who is far more likely to be murdered by law enforcement just for walking down the street.
That was hardcore reality. And you have some people that still do this.
Nothing. I know nothing.
That's right. Right? And so the thing about it is, when it comes out, one of the things that also comes down to it is reality.
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe truth.
Say that again.
I don't believe this is happening. Only fools refuse to believe truth.
Thank you for tuning in to the Real CP Show.